Over the last few years, there has been an increasing attack on religions in general and Islam in particular. The attacks have been mounted by a wide source of individuals, from highly intellectual PhD professors to the lowest common denominator, with people who are full of hatred and hate speech. We attempt to present some response to these attacks in an intellectual and systematic review. A few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, somebody presented an attack on Islam. The presentation was titled, "Does Allah Commit Shirk?" The first thing we do is analyze the accuracy of the data presented. And that particular presenter had very accurate data. He did indeed cite very accurate verses from the Quran and accurate hadith. But his conclusion, his demeanor and his tone leave a lot to be desired. For example, the conclusions were all biased and one-sided only. If you go to buy a car, the car dealer will not bother tell you about the advantages of make A versus brand B, which you want to buy, because he has an agenda of selling you that particular car. However, if you go to your doctor, you do expect your doctor to tell you about all forms of optional treatment, which medications are best, and what the advantages and disadvantages of doing surgery versus medical treatment, and so forth. We believe that when somebody is presenting you with an argument for or against any particular religion or religions in general, the argument should be unbiased. The presenter should present you with accurate information, accurate analysis, and tell you the pros and cons of each conclusion. So to go back to the presentation that was done 4 or 5 years ago about does Allah commit shirk, I'll start by clarifying certain terms. Allah is the Arabic word for God. Muslims call God Allah, Arab Christians call God Allah, Arab Jews call God Allah. Everybody who speaks Arabic calls God Allah. Number 2, shirk. What does shirk mean? It means associating partners with Allah. This is the biggest sin in Islam, and the presenter clearly said that, and very accurately so. And in Islam it says that Allah would forgive any sin but shirk. The third thing I want to clarify is the term hadith, which is anything that the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, either said, did, condoned, or did not disapprove of. That being said, the speaker or the presenter of that YouTube film started providing us with accurate data, as mentioned above. He cited verses from the Quran that shirk is the greatest sin in Islam, and we said that this is accurate. He cited several hadiths that also reach the same conclusion, and that is definitely accurate. And then he cites something very interesting. He says that the Quran and the hadith prohibit us from swearing by anything other than Allah. And he's absolutely 100% correct. And then the other piece of data that he presents is that Allah has, in the Quran, swore by things other than himself. He swore by Muhammad, the Prophet. He swore by everything that we can see or not see. He swore by the mountain. He swore by the angels. He swore by the very Quran. Good? Good. Now, the erroneous conclusion is that if God swore by things other than himself, and God prohibited us from swearing by anything other than himself, because that would be tantamount to shirk, then Allah has committed shirk. This is a very wrong conclusion. And intellectually it does not hold water. Why is that? Let's take an example in our life. The government in the US is governed by the people for the people. We, the people, endow our government with certain privileges and rights that we ourselves are not allowed to. For example, collecting taxes. You cannot collect taxes from your neighbor. That will be called stealing or racketeering. Imprisonment. You cannot hold anybody against their will. That's kidnapping. The government does that routinely with criminals. We want the government to put them in jails. The very act of execution by the government, capital punishment. If you kill somebody intentionally, that's murder. But we are all in agreement that if the government is executing somebody, the government is not committing murder. Why is that? Because the government is different than the people. They have certain privileges and powers that we have endowed upon them. Now, God is omnipotent. We cannot endow any power on God. He can do whatever He wants. We cannot empower Him. He is all-powerful. So, God can do what we cannot do, including swearing by anything that He wants that we ourselves are prohibited from doing. Muslims, Jews, and Christians believe, all over the world, believe that God gives us life and God takes life away. It would be a false argument to say that God is a mass murderer, because the 200,000 or so lives that die every day, the great majority of which are innocent, have died because of the will of God. And nobody in his sane mind would say that God is a mass murderer. It's a wrong conclusion. It's a false argument. Now, why do people use false arguments? To win and certain kind of followers. And usually they associate that with hate rhetoric and disagreeable terms in order to influence other people. But a smart viewer will balance the information correctly and balance the conclusions correctly. Well, I hope that answered the question of does Allah commit shirk, and we hope that in the near future we'll be presenting more answers to more questions about religions in general and Islam in particular. Thank you very much for listening.